Hey everybody, Alex Newman here with Conversations That Matter. Thank you so much for joining us. Today we have a very special guest. His name is Jack Cashill. He is an investigative reporter. He's written a huge number of books. He has done a lot of great journalism for a lot of great publications and continues to do that. He's a very prolific writer. We invited him on today because he is one of the leading experts on what happened to Flight TWA-800. In fact, he wrote a whole book on it. It was published in 2016 by Regnery. It's called TWA-800, The Crash, The Cover-Up, The Conspiracy, which, according to Wikipedia, might make him a conspiracy theorist. But Jack, thank you so much for joining us. And there's been some new information, some whistleblowers who've come out about TWA Flight 800, and it seems like it confirms your reporting and your thesis. Tell us what actually happened to this flight.
Well, the flight left JFK in New York at 8:19 p.m. on a nice July evening in 1996. Got 12 minutes along the southern coast of Long Island, which is a very heavily frequented coast. A lot of people out on the beaches, on their decks, whatever. And about 250 of them saw a missile fly up and hit the plane and blow it up. Missile or missiles. And the last time I was on, Alex, we talked about the whistleblower who came forward. I think a more promising development is the lawsuit recently launched by the family members, about a dozen family members, through the incredible, unstinting work of physicist, researcher Tom Stalkup, who's been working on this project literally for the last 25 years. And in 2015, he and Christina Borgeson, who had been a CBS producer before she got involved in Flight 800, and they fired her over it, put out a really excellent documentary I think it was just called TWA Flight 800, worth watching if you could find it. But the lawsuit, and what Stalkup did, and he's a very sharp, technically oriented guy. He has taken, he's been, Freedom of Information Act, using that FOIA, FOIAing the authorities to near death. And he forced a hearing in Massachusetts in which he got, I was astonished at the sophistication and the depth of the information he was able to glean through these FOIA requests. And he put that into the law. He has a Boston attorney who's filing the case, but it's really his work. And he gets really into the nuts and bolts of who's involved, and it's pretty damning.
So for those who aren't familiar with a lot of this, Jack, what do you think happened to that flight? You mentioned a missile. Okay, who fired the missile? Why did they fire the missile? And why was this not reported early on? Why was this covered up?
Well, from Stalkup's work, for me, eases the 5% uncertainty I had about who fired the missile. The U.S. Navy fired the missile. And it was in the midst of an exercise. They had been doing a series of exercises along this off the coast of New Jersey and the south coast of Long Island. And the reason they were doing it is because the only place that had the computing power to initiate this new radar system, very complex radar system that would be used among all the combatants in a battle group, was based in New Jersey. It was land-based in New Jersey, so they'd be near it, relatively close to it. Plus, the whole thrust of the exercise was to be able to pick out an oncoming enemy missile, or let's say an airplane, a hijacked airplane, or a chartered plane filled with explosives, in a crowded airspace, because that's where it would be. I mean, they weren't going to attack. If Al Qaeda was going to attack, they weren't going to attack Utah.
Right.
They were going to attack New York or Washington. This exercise took place on July 17th, 1996, which was 2 days before the Atlanta Olympics. So there was a heightened alert. As Stalkup proved, there had been continuous tests along that coast in the 10, 15, 20 days prior. I've seen the video from the July 12th test. And it's, you see a drone go by, you see a missile go up, you see the drone blow up, you see it fall into the sea. It was recorded by a couple guys testing out their new video camera. They wanted to get the sunrise off the coast of Long Island. And that was entered into evidence, and that through FOIA, they were able to obtain that. And it just tells you the story of what happened. What that does, though, Alex, is it makes a hash out of the total Navy denials of any involvement. And the Navy wasn't denying it because it was their idea to deny it, although they would have probably if they could get away with it. It's run from the scene, pass out medals. Classic way to deal with military mistakes anywhere,
All right.
But this was coming from the top. And I'm sure the message going to the rank and file, at least that a certain circle who had to know what was going on, was that this was top secret. If the enemy finds out that we have this capability and it's imperfect and we render ourselves more vulnerable, national security, et cetera. But to me, the real reason was the same reason we had to cover up Benghazi 10 years ago yesterday. And that was we had a looming presidential election. And the Democratic candidate in power had to get reelected. And as we see now, all much too clearly, they were not adverse to using the tools of the deep state to smooth the path to the White House, back to the White House. And
so, go ahead, Jack.
I was going to say, then they used the FBI took over the investigation on day one. It was illegal. The NTSB should have been in charge, National Transportation Safety Board, but at least they did it publicly. What we found out through the various FOIA requests was that the CIA really took over the investigation from the FBI on day one, and they were really calling the shots. They were the ones who were keeping the FBI under their thumb. And, in the one phrase in Stalkup's lawsuit that I took exception to was where he said the FBI enlisted the help of the CIA. There was no enlisting there. That was an imposition. At that time, in 1996, the FBI was a relatively straight shooting operation. The head of the investigation, Jim Kallstrom, was a Trump supporter in 2016, and he hated the Clintons. So they must have brought some incredible pressure to bear on him, or they may have just worked around him. So the investigation was so compartmentalized, only a handful of people really knew what was going on.
Wow. So there's this lawsuit. Is it too late for accountability? Should there be accountability? What kind of accountability should there be? I mean, should somebody be going to jail over this? Should there be, apologies and big payouts to the family members? What would be an appropriate way to move forward? And is that possible?
Well, the first thing what the suit would ask for is damages for the family members. I mean, who've been, it's not, there was a payout, airlines always pay out right away. But what they can't compensate for is the 25 years of anguish these people went through, knowing that they were being lied to. That would be step one. As to who's still culpable, well, the Clintons are still around. Jim Kallstrom, the head of the FBI investigation, died just last year, and I think I may have told you, but I talked to him just in 2016. I tried to get him to go public because he could turn the fate of if he really wanted to stop Hillary Clinton, the best way to do it was to go public and come clean with TWA-800. He didn't want to hear that at all. He was deep into denial. I would say also culpable. What happened? The CIA. This is really shocking. The whole agency should, I think, at this point, be disbanded. The fellow who masterminded the cover-up, and I know his name. I don't need to share it right now. But after a bunch of years went by, he went public with his boasting about what he had done, how he had finessed the FBI into going along with him. He didn't use those terms, but and then they gave him a medal. They literally gave him a big medal for his work on TWA-800.
Oh, wow.
It's really shocking when you see it. But who's truly culpable and where heads should roll, even retrospectively, is the New York Times. Governments, our founding fathers knew, would always go wrong. They always try to, the people in power always try to keep power. What they did not expect Was it Thomas Jefferson said a nation expects to be both, what is the word, free?
Ignorant and free.
Yeah. Never existed, never will,
Yeah.
And the New York Times owned that story. It was in its backyard. They swarmed it. They owned it. The FBI only spoke to the New York Times. Access was so precious to the New York Times then that they were willing to sabotage the truth of the story. That was a New York Times then that had still a shred of credibility. It wasn't the New York Times, the Russia collusion hoax, which was, they wouldn't even have to ask. They would just say, hey, Bill needs to get reelected. Would you come on, play ball, right? That would have been out, right? Then it took a little finessing. And I talked to a couple of Times reporters, and they were very uneasy talking to me. And I was giving them information. And they were really uneasy about getting that information.
Surprise. Now, that's par for the course for the New York Times. Jack, we're out of time, but what's the best place for people to follow your work? I know you wrote a book on this some years ago, but you're doing regular articles.
I do, right. And I'll have a new article on the stalk-up lawsuit coming out in a few days. You just go to www.cashill.com. All my articles are there, and you can also get access to my books through that. So, but Alex, I appreciate what you're doing. Keep the faith and keep. I still think it's possible to save this country before we lose it, and I think we're going to get a good chance in about 2 months.
Hey, fantastic. Well, Jack, thank you so much for coming on the program. Jack Cashill, ladies and gentlemen, writer, very prolific writer, journalist, author, and one of the leading experts on this whole TWA Flight 800. Thanks for tuning in. Alex Newman here with Conversations That Matter for the New American Magazine. Until next time, God bless you all.